Welcome to This Explainer. Look, today we are going to experience a massive paradigm shift regarding one of the most universally recognized structures on the planet. I want you to completely wipe your mind of everything you think you know about the Taj Mahal. We've all heard the story, right? The ultimate testament of a grieving emperor for his beloved wife. But what if I told you that the world's greatest monument to love might not actually be about love at all? Let's unpack the fascinating research of scholar Wayne E. Begley and uncover the awe-inspiring and frankly, completely arrogant truth behind the marble.
For centuries, we've basically been under a spell. It's this universal illusion, cemented by romantic writers and influential travelers over the years. The Nobel Prize-winning poet Rabindranath Tagore, he famously called the Taj Mahal a teardrop on the cheek of time. Even world traveler Eleanor Roosevelt stated that its white marble symbolizes the purity of real love. We all share this widespread romantic notion that the Emperor Shah Jahan built this vast mausoleum for his wife, Mumtaz Mahal, out of unparalleled marital devotion. We look at its beauty and naturally assume, what else but great love could have inspired such incredible art?
And honestly, when you look at it, it's incredibly easy to see why. I mean, this pristine white mausoleum, standing majestic at 250 feet high and set within a massive 42-acre enclosure, seems to offer irrefutable proof of intense devotion. Official 17th century accounts heavily exaggerated Shah Jahan's grief, even claiming his beard turned white overnight. That narrative just snowballed during the Romantic era into the guidebook explanation we hear today, the myth of the celibate, eternally devoted widower. But here's the catch. This myth ignores a mountain of crucial historical evidence about who Shah Jahan actually was and what this building was truly meant to say.
All right, Section 1, the real Shah Jahan, beyond the myth.
Okay, let's dive into this, because to really understand the building, we have to understand the architect. We are going to look past the romanticized grieving widower and examine the deeply flawed hero behind the monument, prepared to have the illusion shattered. Contemporary European accounts and Mughal histories paint a very, very different picture of Shah Jahan than the guidebooks do. Sir Thomas Roe, the first English ambassador to the Mughal court, met Shah Jahan in 1617 when the prince was in his 20s. Roe didn't see a tender romantic. He characterized the vain young prince as ravenous and tyrannical. He even wrote that Shah Jahan was possessed of such a pride as may teach Lucifer. This was a man utterly obsessed with his own power, destiny, and the glorious emblems of his rule.
So, let's look at the cold, hard, unromantic realities of the emperor. In his relentless pursuit of the imperial throne, Shah Jahan literally murdered his elder brother and eventually ordered the deaths of 5 other close male relatives. And after Mumtaz Mahal's death, far from being celibate for the remaining 35 years of his life, chroniclers like the Italian Manucci reported he relentlessly indulged his sexual appetites with the wives of his officials. The French traveler François Bernier even recorded widespread rumors of an incestuous relationship with his eldest daughter. And his ultimate demise, he didn't die of a broken heart. He died from urinary complications brought on by overdoses of aphrodisiacs he took to bolster his waning vanity. Not exactly the Romeo we were promised, is he? This completely shatters that romantic myth.
Which brings us to the central question of our explainer today. If love isn't the driving force behind this colossal architectural achievement, what is? The Taj possesses this charismatic power that awes almost everyone who sees it. Yet some critics intuitively sensed the myth was flawed. Back in 1914, the German philosopher Hermann Kaiserling felt the Taj actually lacked spiritual power and was, in his words, absolutely purposeless as a mere tomb. He said it might just as well be a pleasure resort. So, if it's not a monument to a beloved wife, what was Shah Jahan really trying to build?
Moving on to Section 2, Blueprints of Paradise, the Architectural Evidence. If we treat the architecture as forensic evidence, a great place to start is the entrance. When you compare the gateway to the tomb of Shah Jahan's grandfather, Akbar, with the gateway to the Taj Mahal, visually and thematically, they set entirely different expectations. Islamic tombs of this scale usually feature carefully selected inscriptions that clue us into their ultimate purpose. And comparing these two gateways reveals a massive cognitive dissonance in the traditional Taj Mahal story.
Just think about the text comparison here. The inscriptions on Akbar's tomb are flowery Persian poetry, extravagantly claiming that its gardens surpass the beauty of the celestial paradise. It's welcoming, it's poetic. But the Taj Mahal? It abandons Persian poetry entirely. Instead, its massive gateway is covered in intense, apocalyptic verses from the Quran, specifically Surah 89, the daybreak. It summons up a terrifying vision of the Day of Judgment, warning of a day when the earth is ground to powder and God arrives with his angels. Why would a supposed love poem in stone be covered in terrifying warnings about the end of the world?
Now, the absolutely crucial point here is that this wasn't an accident. The brilliant calligrapher Amanat Khan deliberately designed this entire inscriptional program. There are 22 different Quranic passages inscribed across the complex, and they aren't just there for visual decoration. They serve a completely unified eschatological theme, meaning they are laser-focused on the final events of history, the resurrection, and the Day of Judgment. The final words you read on the gateway before entering the gardens are God's direct invitation, "And enter thou my paradise."
Now, what's really interesting is how the architecture literally maps out that promise of paradise. The Taj utilizes a classic Chaharbagh layout, a four-fold Persian garden divided by water channels. In the allegorical scheme of the Taj, these four water channels are clearly meant to symbolize the four flowing rivers of paradise mentioned in Islamic texts. You aren't just walking into a pretty courtyard, you are metaphorically walking into the afterlife.
And the designers took this a step further. Right in the center of the garden is a raised marble tank. According to Begley's research and Islamic cosmology, like the famous depictions of Muhammad at the gateway to paradise, this central tank is a literal physical replica of the celestial Kawthar tank of abundance, promised to the prophet in heaven. Every single physical element of the Taj's grounds corresponds to a specific celestial counterpart.
Which leads us to Section 3, the Throne of God, a cosmic map.
This brings us to the big revelation that ties all these strange clues together. If the gardens are paradise, and the central tank is the heavenly Kawthar tank, what on earth is that massive, majestic mausoleum at the end of the garden actually supposed to be? Well, to answer that, we have to introduce a concept called the Arsh. In Islamic cosmology, this is the infinitely vast divine throne of God, situated directly above the gardens of paradise. Now, Orthodox theology dictates that God and his throne are entirely beyond human comprehension and absolutely unrepresentable. However, in popular, more fundamentalist cosmology at the time, the throne was described as an actual physical structure, supported by four angels, where God will sit to judge humanity on the day of resurrection.
Now, keep in mind Shah Jahan's massive ego. This is a man whose entire identity was wrapped up in power, sovereignty, and unparalleled magnificence. I mean, just look at him sitting on the fabulously wealthy peacock throne. The death of Mumtaz Mahal was undoubtedly a blow, but for a man of his ambition, it acted as a catalyst. It gave him the perfect excuse to construct his ultimate obsession. He wasn't just building a tomb. He was attempting the ultimate act of architectural hubris. He was literally building a replica of the divine throne.
And the visual comparison brilliantly illustrates that theory. When you look at the iconic, massive, bulbous dome of the Taj Mahal and compare it to the typical shape of 16th and 17th century Islamic thrones and Mughal ceremonial crowns, the resemblance is unmistakable. In fact, the Persian words Taj Mahal literally translate to crown palace. The architects intentionally emphasize this throne-like silhouette to allude to its celestial prototype. It's designed to radiate transcendent majesty because it represents the very seat of divine power.
So, when we put all these puzzle pieces together, we get this grand unification theory of the Taj Mahal that completely rewrites history. The garden is an exact replica of the celestial paradise. The central tank, the heavenly Kawthar tank. Those four towering minarets surrounding the tomb, they aren't just decorative pillars. They represent the four angels, or the four saintly pillars of the faith whose cosmic job is to support the divine throne. And the majestic mausoleum dome itself represents the Arsh, the throne of God. The Taj Mahal is not a monument of marital devotion. It is an arrogant, breathtakingly ambitious, allegorical map of the Day of Judgment.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating reality to ponder. We have basically spent centuries projecting our own romantic ideals onto Shah Jahan, preferring the myth of a heartbroken widower over the reality of a ruthless, egomaniacal emperor. The real meaning of the Taj Mahal is far more complex, far more deeply tied to cosmic theology, and frankly, far more arrogant than a simple love letter. So I leave you with this to think about. Does our deeply human desire for a good love story blind us to the awe-inspiring, sometimes uncomfortable truths of history? Next time you look at a picture of the Taj Mahal, ask yourself what you're really seeing: a teardrop on the cheek of time or the throne of God itself? Thanks for learning with me today on this explainer. Keep questioning everything.